The book, The Secret War with Iran, is a description, a first description of what I see as the longest ongoing war in the Middle East. It's not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq, not even in Lebanon. It is the clandestine war taking place, most of it under the public's radar, between the West on one hand, mainly the intelligence services of the United States and Israel, the CIA, Mossad, and other intelligence services of these countries, with occasion appearances of the MI6, the French DGSE, the German BND, and on the other hand, the clerical regime of Iran. I would refer in this talk to Iran, but my true intention is to the regime of Iran. I don't have the statistics, and I don't think that anyone has these, but I believe that if we would have run a poll through the Iranian public, we would see a majority, maybe even a vast majority, that would be happy to have this regime taken out of power. But for the time being, this regime is in place, and I believe very strong, and so I refer here to the regime and not the Iranian people. And I would be more than happy. I would have been more than happy to come terribly late, but still come here today and report to you that the West has been winning this clandestine war, but this would not have been the truth whatsoever, because the West is losing. The Iranians, through the last 30 years of war, almost since the day that Khomeini took power on the 1st of February 1979, the West has been proven less capable, sophisticated, original, determined, shrewd, and the Iranians have the upper hand. Yet, in the last 2 years, we are witnessing something that could suggest a recovery of Western abilities, the abilities of the Israeli and American intelligence services, capabilities to collect intelligence and to launch operations based on that intelligence in the Middle East. And just an examples, I would name 4 occasions that might hint to this recovery. The first would be the February 2007 defection of a prominent Iranian general figure called General Ali Reza Askari, who vanished in February of 2007 from his Istanbul hotel room, and soon after found himself voluntarily, he was not abducted, in a CIA briefing room in Langley, Virginia, the headquarters of the agency. The agency helped him take some of parts of his family out of Iran, and during that time he has given valuable information to the West about Iran in both spheres of nuclear capabilities and efforts and the export of the Iranian revolution through means of insurgency and terrorism. No one should underestimate the value of such defection, because Ali Reza Askari was a key figure within the Revolutionary Guard and the VIVAC, the Ministry of Intelligence, for a very, very long time. He was the commander of the Revolutionary Guard in Lebanon, and after one of the founders of Hezbollah, one of the people that are in charge more than others to the capability of Hezbollah and to the ability of Hezbollah to defeat Israel in the war in Lebanon of 2006. Ali Reza Askari met when he was a young intelligence officer back in early 80s and served as part of the Iranian attempt to encourage Kurdish insurgencies against Saddam Hussein. You remember the war with Iraq. He met with another young intelligence officer called Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, now the president of Iran. When Ahmadinejad came to power in 2005, he found his old friend, but basically they were not friends, they were fighting all the time, they were quarreling all the time. He found Ali Reza Askari in the presidential office as the senior intelligence advisor to the president, and he didn't fire him, but he neutralized him from most of his authority, which led to the connections between the CIA and Ali Riza Askari. So that's the first incident. The second incident would be the July 2007, how would I describe it? A mishap, an accident, something that was termed by an Israeli cabinet minister as a miraculous accident that happened in a Syrian-Iranian Scud missile factory in an installation in Syria called Al-Safir. The technicians, the Iranian and Syrian technicians, were filling up one of the missiles with fuel. It exploded. Many of them got killed, and severe damage was caused to the facility. An accident. In February of 2008 happened the third example, and that would be the assassination of the supreme military commander of Hezbollah, Imad Mounia. I believe that the symbolic effect of that assassination has vast greater repercussion than the actual loss of someone, even given his great strategic and tactical skills in guerrilla warfare. Imad Mounia, second only to Osama bin Laden in the most wanted list of the Bureau of the FBI, $25 offered for his head, and this money was saved. He was the person who killed the biggest number of Americans until September 11. Numerous attempts have been taken to kill him, and someone in February of 2008 replaced the backseat of his Pajero car and killed him. And the fourth most significant event that I would mention in this context would be exactly a year ago, the Israeli stealth bombing of the Syrian reactor in the 6th of September 2007. CIA analyst defined this project, he called it Triangle of Evil. North Korean know-how, machinery, and experience and raw material, Iranian financing, and Syrian soil. Something that was termed by Israeli military intelligence as a turn-on-key project, which basically means that it does not resemble the nuclear project of Iraq, Iran, or Libya, which called for different countries supplying different parts and trying to assemble them together to one project, but that the North Koreans are being paid by Iran, and the North Koreans, they're not philanthropists, they don't work for free. They were given great money, and they were paid to give Syria an instant, rapid project that would lead them as soon as possible to the A-bomb. This project started as early as the year of 2000, immediately after the funeral of President Assad, Hafez al-Assad. His son Bashar meets with the high delegation that Kim Jong-il sent to give him condolences, headed by his son. And in that meeting, apparently, the initial idea was raised to supply with nuclear material and know-how to Syria. First indication came to the knowledge of the NSA when intercepting some North Koreans speaking from Syria in 2004, but yet it was not revealed what is going on in that place called Deir ez-Zor or Al-Kibar. And there was a reason why they succeeded to hide this operation all this time, because when President Assad, Bashar al-Assad, created the mechanism behind the project, which is a very big project, though it was done only between North Korea and Syria, and on the ground performed mostly by North Korean technicians, Assad created something that is named by Israeli intelligence as a pregnancy outside of the womb, which basically called for a mechanism bypassing all bureaucracy in order to achieve two main goals. First, as we all know, bureaucracy is always slower. When you create bypass, you can reach a faster target. But the main idea was Assad's fear that the regular Syrian bureaucracy, also inside the military and intelligence establishment, are infiltrated by other American or Israeli intelligence. Basically, he believes that every electronic communication going on in Syria, fax, telex, email, SMS, cell phone, etc., they are all being bugged by either the NSA or the Israeli equivalent unit 8200. Every time that Mustafa calls Muhammad, Moishaleh is listening. So that's the basic belief, and he had some footnotes to support this belief. Throughout the years, 60s, 70s, 80s, while doing construction work, the Syrians repeatedly found huge bugging device in Syrian ground, and when trying to disassemble them, they exploded. In 3rd of March 1978, one of these devices was found on the main phone line connecting one of the biggest aerial bases of the Syrian Air Force to the main switch in Damascus. The Syrians, knowing that these devices might explode, called the KGB, who sent 12 experts to try and disassemble it, and when they touched it, of course, it exploded, killing all 12 of them. Syria, the next day, appealed and submitted an official complaint to the United Nations saying that Israel is using nuclear batteries to fuel the bugging devices that it is planting inside their ground. So what Assad did is that he created a bypassing mechanism using all techniques of sealed envelope with VAX saying top secret in Arabic, and using motorcycle couriers instead of telephones and electronic communication. Yet, the project was discovered, some because of the information given by Ali Riza Askari, that Iranian defectors, and some from other sources. It was discovered, and much effort was put between the United States and Israeli intelligence services to discover what exactly is going on in El-Kibar. When both sides reached the conclusion that basically Syria is building a nuclear reactor, Olmert, the Israeli Prime Minister, who just said that he is going to serve for another 2 weeks, I don't know if you heard, but he promised to resign after the primary election in his party, but now he said that he wants to stay to enjoy office for another 2 weeks. Unbelievable. I'm sorry. But Olmert was put in front of a very tough dilemma. On one hand, of course, he was willing and he thought that this project must be taken out, an existential threat to Israel. But then people from analysts of the CIA dealing with Syria and Israeli analysts from the military intelligence analysis branch all came forward, or some of them came, and told Prime Minister Olmert and President Bush that if this strike is taking place, President Assad would never give up his damaged pride and would launch a full-scale attack against Israel. As an example, these analysts gave what Assad did in the years of 2002-2003, when, as a retaliation for things that Hezbollah did in Lebanon, the Prime Minister Ariel Sharon ordered to make few supersonic bombs over the presidential palace in Damascus. I think a useless provocation, and it broke some windows. And in 2003, Israeli jet destroyed a minor, not very important Syrian radar station, killing 2 soldiers. As a reaction to this provocation, though not a severe damage done to Syria, Assad completely changed the policy of his father and ordered not just the turning of blind eye towards Iranian shipments of arms to Hezbollah, but to start and supply Hezbollah with Syrian weapons. Not a lot of people know that, but 67% of the casualties in the Lebanon war, the Lebanon 2006 war, 67% of the Israeli casualties, soldiers and civilians, were killed not from Iranian weapon, but from Syrian weapon. The rockets that were fired on Israeli urban areas and the Matisse and Kornet anti-tank missiles. Russian missiles supplied to Syria and then supplied to Hezbollah by Syria. So the analysts go to Olmert in April and May of 2007 and say, look, if this is what President Assad did when we broke some of the windows in his palace, just imagine what he would have done if we take out what he sees as his crown jewels. The other option that Olmert could take was to take the information and go to the IAEA inspectors in Vienna, give them material and say, look, he is in violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Take care of it. In one of the crucial classified, top-secret discussion dealing with that issue, Olmert quoted a famous phrase of the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, that thought that the United Nations is an incompetent organization that could never be of use. And he, the United Nations in Hebrew is Ha'umot HaMauchadot. The acronym is Ha'umot HaMauchadot, acronym So Ben-Gurion said something that it's not in Hebrew, but you will be able to understand it. He said Shmum, which means nothing in Hebrew, but you understand his approach. So he thought the United Nations is completely shmum, is completely incompetent. And Olmert followed, I don't know if it's true, but Olmert followed that idea and said, I'm not going to give this to the IAEA. They have proved to be useless when it came to Iran, to Libya, to North Korea, to Iraq at the time. We are going to take out the reactor. And in that discussion, another person who had a major part in the decision-making process, someone called General Uri Sagi, the former director of military intelligence, compared the coming Israeli strike to the strike that took place in 1981 when Menachem Begin ordered to take out the Iraqi reactor Tammuz or Sirak near Baghdad. Now, when Begin did it, he was advised by the military and intelligence apparatuses not to take responsibility. Now, Begin made a courageous decision when ordering the attack. But immediately after the airplanes reported that the reactor is destroyed, he stopped being a visionary or courageous prime minister and returned to be a politician, reminding himself that the elections are coming, and decided to take responsibility. He summoned, he called to his office Sam Lewis, then the American ambassador, urgently, and said, Mr. Ambassador, I have something very important I want to tell you. And in one of the interviews given for the book, From the Secret War with Iran, Sam Lewis recalls that he said, yes, Prime Minister, I assume that you are going to tell me that you destroyed the anti-aircraft missile of Syria deployed in Lebanon. So Begin said, no, we destroyed the Iraqi reactor. And Sam Lewis says he was shocked. Israel took responsibility, suffered major condemnation from the United States and from other places. By the way, I had a meeting with the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal this morning, and on the meeting room they have 5 op-eds in frames, and one of them, like they chose from the last 30 years of the paper of Wall Street Journal, one of them is what they see from their point of view as being very proud of, is the op-ed in which they were the only ones the next day who justified the Israeli strike on the Iraqi reactor. And I believe that the differences between reactions to the attack in '81 international consensus condemning Israel and the very weak, if any, reactions in 2007 reflect also some change, some shift with world opinion towards steps that are being taken against countries who are aiming at having nuclear weapons. Anyway, in that discussion, when coming to the issue of whether Israel should or should not take responsibility, that General Uri Sagi said, quote, "If I have a problem with my neighbor and I want to deal with it, I want to deter my neighbor, I want to harm my neighbor, I have two basic ways to do it. The first would be to take him out in the middle of the street, to the middle of the street in the middle of the day in front of all the neighbors and kick him hard. The other option would be to break into his house secretly in the middle of the night, damage his car, put some sugar in his engine or whatever, and just him and me knowing that. And I do suggest, I do advise you, Prime Minister, choose the second way." And so immediately after, and Olmert agreed, immediately after the attack, Olmert sends a secret message through the Turkish Prime Minister to President Assad, saying basically this: A, we know that you were trying to develop nuclear power with the help of the North Korea. B, we destroyed that ability, or this attempt. C, if you would not launch a war, or a full-scale war, or any attack against Israel, I promise you, Mr. President, that Israel would remain quiet, we would not boast with that, we would not take any responsibility, we would say nothing. And here I must say, as a journalist, I had a major and surprising discovery, and the discovery was that Israeli politicians can keep a secret. And indeed, Olmert made everybody keep very low profile, and this is the reason, this promise given to Assad is the reason why Israel, till today, didn't take any responsibility for that attack. I believe that Assad, for the time being, have given up any idea of launching any sort of military attack, but we should not underestimate the damaged pride of a president that was humiliated at least twice, once with the assassination of Mounia, and twice with the attack on the reactor. So these are just few examples of how intelligence in the Middle East, or intelligence of the Israel and the United States, has recovered. But yet, Iran still pursues its foreign policies in what I see as two main paths. The first would be export of revolution. I don't know if Ayatollah Hashemi Musawi Khomeini read or didn't read the writings of Trotsky, but he in fact behaved in a way that he understands that a revolution that does not export itself is doomed to collapse to the inside. And almost from day one, he took power in February of 1979, as early as November of 1979, though he was occupied with numerous problems of interior opposition and the coming war with Iraq and execution of opponents, etc., etc. In November of 1979, 8 months after he took power, he sends his first delegates to Lebanon to try and build a militia, the party of God, Hezbollah. Why? Because he wanted to replicate his brilliant success in the revolution that he led. Khomeini was successful in taking down the sixth largest army in the world without almost even one single shot being fired. Strong regime, taking over the 17th largest country in the world. Khomeini wanted to, what he did in Iran, wanted to replicate to other countries. Lebanon, supporting Hamas in the territories, supporting Islamic Jihad, having tight connection with Al-Qaeda prior to September 11, supporting Al-Jamaa al-Islamiyah in Egypt, and I continue with this list. This sake, indeed, the connections between Iran and Hezbollah are of brotherhood because they are both Shiites and Hezbollah got their religious and military education in Iran. However, Khomeini and his successor Ali Khamenei, the current supreme leader, have seen attribute great importance to the aid given to forces in the Middle East and other places to aid Muslims and to enhance Iranian influence and set a foothold in everywhere that could be sympathetic to the Iranian revolution. They helped, for example, to establish the Mujahideen Brigade in the Bosnian army that had a major contribution against the forces that tried to perform genocide against the Muslims of Bosnia. This is one area, this is the export of the revolution through means of insurgency, economic aid, and terrorism. The other path would be the pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Iran, when Khomeini came to power, he found under its rule, he found a very advanced nuclear project. The Shah saw a great threat from the Soviet Union, and he wanted to have the A-bomb as a sort of an insurance policy. Khomeini said, I do not support the development of nuclear power. He issued a religious edict, a fatwa, ordering the termination of the nuclear project. And according to some testimonies and intelligence, even when his people, when the bureaucracy came to him during the Iran-Iraq war and begged for the renewal of the nuclear project as a countermeasure for the chemical weapon that Saddam was using, Khomeini still said, I'm not going to hold this weapon. He saw what America did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a war crime, and he didn't want to have the same kind of ability or the dilemma whether to use it in times of distress. When he dies, and he was very stubborn with this issue, when he dies in 1989, his successor Ali Khamenei flips the fatwa and allows the continuation or the renewal of the nuclear project. Iran signs a very big contract with Russia for the building of or the rebuilding of the reactors in Bushehr. And for 10 years, from 1992 to 2002, Israeli and American intelligence are investing great efforts into the attempt to understand what exactly is going on between Russia and Iran, because they believe that Iran would use this path, this Russian path, to develop nuclear capability, nuclear weapon. Also, the leaders of America and Israel are approaching Presidents Yeltsin and Putin, asking them, almost begging them, to stop supplying the Iranians with this nuclear equipment and know-how, because this would, according to Israeli and American requests, this would lead the Iranians to have the A-bomb. In 2001, President Putin makes a sort of a secret promise to Prime Minister Sharon when they meet in Moscow. And he says to Sharon, listen, we will never end up finishing the building of the reactors. We would make all sorts of excuses. Excuses will say that the Iranians are not paying enough. We will say that we have some problems, technical problems, but we will never end up building the reactors. Probably most of you heard that the company building the reactors published last week that it is going to be done with the works until the end of this year. I don't know if this is true or not, but yet it is very clear that the Russians are stalling time and they are doing whatever they can not to finish the reactors. Back in 2001, when Putin gave this assurance to Sharon, the Israelis were happy. The Israeli intelligence said, very good, we were successful in delaying the project. But then an information came from Mossad saying that Iranian scientists are also happy. And they are saying that they are approaching the goal, they are making great advancement. And so someone in Israel thought if the Israelis are happy and the Iranians are happy, something is wrong. And only then, very, very late, was it discovered that for 10 years the CIA and Mossad and all other intelligence agencies of these countries were banging the wrong door? The Russian path was nothing but a decoy, a diversion of attention, a camouflage to the real path in which Iran almost, and now have reached the capability to have the nuclear fuel cycle. And these are the connections between Iran and Pakistan, or to be precise, between Iran and the Pakistani proliferator AQ Khan. When this was discovered, the Israeli Air Force personnel and Mossad officials came to Prime Minister Sharon and asked for his approval to strike the site in which the centrifuges were deployed, called Natanz. Sharon didn't give the approval, and instead, and with all good reason, I think, and instead, Sharon ordered the leak of the information to an Iranian opposition group, the Mujahideen Halq, which assembled a press conference in Washington, published information shocking the world of how come the Iranians have bluffed the IAEA inspectors for so long. Then it led to the famous visit of Mohammed al-Baradei to the Natanz and to the ongoing discourse between Iran and the international community, something that I would term as a very sophisticated tango dance. The Iranians basically are trying not to be declared as a rogue state like North Korea on one hand, but gain time and have as much advancement of the nuclear project on the other. I always say to friends who are not Israelis that if they want to understand Israeli nature, if they want to get a grasp of Israeli moves and actions, to understand Israeli character, they would not be able to do all these if they don't take into consideration how profound is the trauma of the Holocaust in the character of every Israeli. I'm a second generation to Holocaust survivors. Both my parents are Holocaust survivors. But even people in Israel who are fourth and now even fifth generation to the Holocaust have this in their identity, not as a historical memory, but as a living trauma. And I'm saying this because people in Israel are convinced that once he has the ability, President Ahmadinejad, who is going to appear next week in the United Nations, President Ahmadinejad, once he has the ability, will press the red button and drop the atomic bomb on their heads. As someone seen as understanding, maybe understanding something about Iran, there is no day when I walk the streets of Tel Aviv when people don't come and ask me, not if, but only when. Now, I understand this. I truly, and I appreciate it. But I don't accept the assumption that the Iranians are going to use atomic weapon on Israel. I believe that throughout the years, the regime of Iran have proven to be pragmatic, rational, and very, very cautious when it came to maybe the only primary interest that this regime is trying to preserve, and this is the preservation of the regime. Every time that the existence of the regime was under threat, this regime took very big steps backwards. And so I don't think that they dream, well, maybe dream, but I don't think that they plan to use the atomic weapons against Israel. They know that Israel has the capability to launch a counterstrike. They understand that by using atomic weapon, they reach a verdict for their own people of mutual destruction. They might be supportive of suicide terrorism, but they are not suicidal themselves. You know, every pistachio being exported from Iran to other countries even to the US. Hashemi Rafsanjani, number 2 in the regime, gets the commission. He likes life. He doesn't want to be nuked. These people are, well, sometimes seen from the outside, they might look bizarre to some people, but they are very sophisticated, very shrewd. They don't want to be attacked. So why have they been investing so much into trying to have this weapon and losing so much in the international arena? The reason is that they want to have the ability to execute whatever foreign policy they want, to help Hezbollah, to have Hamas as their primary objective and distant any or destroying any chance to have any sustainable peace between Israel and Palestinians, to support the nuclear project of Syria, to undermine the regime of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, to assist Al-Qaeda, to do all these things without being afraid that the United States would do to them what it did to Saddam Hussein. Just imagine if President Bush would have known on the eve of the invasion to Iraq in 2003 that Iraq holds nuclear weapon and the means to deliver it to either Saudi Arabia or Israel, would he order the attack? I strongly doubt that. So the Iranians want to have this umbrella, nuclear umbrella over their heads as an insurance policy for the preservation of the regime. And at the same time, they are deploying sleeper cells, terrorist sleeper cells, all over the world with the assistance of Hezbollah in the last 10 years, to use in case as a deterrence that these cells are going to be used in case America launches an attack. In March of 1992, Israeli choppers working with orders from the chief of staff then, Ehud Barak, now the head of the Labour Party, the former Israeli prime minister, killed the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Hussein Abbas Musawi. Only 3 months later, Imad Mounia planned and executed the bombing of the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, and 1.5 years later, bombing the Jewish community center, Amia, in that city, killing hundreds. And he could do that because he already had the sleeper cells in the triangle of borders between Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil in a place called Ciudad del Este. I visited the place. I even met with the cousin of Nasrallah, and Hezbollah has deployed his forces, his troops in that place and in other places as well. One of the stories appearing in the book is how Imad Mounia recruits Lebanese Hezbollah operatives from Montreal and deploys them in New York City in case he needs them to revenge attack on Iran. I would just end with one, usually the chair has the right to ask the first question, but I would use my place near the microphone and ask the first question myself. And the question is Israel going to attack Iran? I'm asking this because this is a question I frequently ask. Israel doesn't want to attack Iran. Israel understands that this would lead to major repercussions, possibly a change of history in the Middle East. Israeli decision makers would be more than happy if economic sanctions would have their effect, if international community would be able to join forces with Russia and China for the international boycott on Iran, if the United States in times of need would strike itself and not leave this job for Israel. Israel doesn't want to execute any sort of military means against Iran, and in any case, Israel has a much lesser ability than the United States Army. That's very clear. But on the other hand, Israel has proved that it still adopts the Begin doctrine, that it would never tolerate the existence of nuclear power in the country, that calls for its destruction, and would, if there's no other option, as a very last resort, and if all other alternatives were exhausted, would go back to what Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion said, that we did not bring the remains of the Holocaust, to the survivors of the Holocaust, to Israel to suffer another Holocaust. I'm sorry to end this brief talk with just these gloomy words, but the situation in the Middle East is tensed and on the verge of explosion, because we have Iran, who has interest in developing a nuclear arsenal as an insurance policy, who supports insurgencies in Iraq, trying to have as many American soldiers coming back home in body bags, supporting Hamas, Hezbollah, and other organizations. We have Syria, with a humiliated president searching for revenge. We have Hezbollah still looking for retaliation for the death of Murnia and feeling very proud of how it won the war with Israel of 2006 and preparing for the next war. And we have Israel with very weak leadership that unfortunately did not use the chances it had to sign peace agreements with the less extreme elements of the area, and was not courageous enough to make the compromise that it needed and take these elements out of the Iranian hug and out of the loop, and in this way trying to weaken Iran. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that I'm ending with this gloomy note, but unfortunately that's the situation. Thank you very much. Now, if there are questions, I would be happy to hear them, and again, I apologize for being late. Yes, please. Very good question. There are those who basically say that, Israeli intelligence who say that, in fact, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, it's a secret, don't tell anyone, that Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is the best mold the Mossad ever planted in Iran. In fact, he's a Farsi Jew, said, and he's put there just to defamate Iranians. Basically, he's the best gift that Israeli foreign ministry could get, because he's doing marvelous job for Israeli propaganda. As you said, he is continuously calling for the destruction of Israel. He is denying the Holocaust. Basically, he's touching every sensitive issue that he can. And also some intelligence reaching American intelligence of meetings that Ahmadinejad had with Ali Larijani, who was the Iranian envoy to the nuclear discourse with Europe, suggested the severe confrontation between them, because Larijani, who is a Western, very educated person, was sent to convince the international community that that in fact Iran is a peacemaking country, peace-loving country, aiming at nothing bad, and the whole nuclear project was just to gain energy, to produce energy, and not to produce any sort of nuclear bomb. Now, he goes to Ahmadinejad and said, Mr. President, what are you doing? I'm trying to convince them that we just want peace and would not harm anyone, and you are saying that you want the destruction of Israel. You support the coming, or the second coming of the Messiah, the Mahdi, and this could happen only after Armageddon war. How could you're basically destroying my work. Now, and now going back to your question, then why is he doing so? I think he's doing so, A, because he truly believes that there was no Holocaust, and Israel should be destroyed. And I have some difficulties with someone who repeatedly believes that there's an aura over his head every time that he appears in front of the United Nations. And not just he saw it, but he believes that everybody in the General Assembly saw it as well. So this as well. Someone who believes to have direct interface with God might be problematic, but having said all that, I think that he's playing a very sophisticated game inside, with the face to interior Iran, not to the outside. He came to a presidential office that was completely with no authority when the supreme leader Khamenei took all responsibilities from Khatami because Khatami was too moderate for him. So when Ahmadinejad came into power, and Ahmadinejad is not a subordinate of Khamenei, he has an Ayatollah called Ayatollah Enati Yazdi from Qom, which belongs to a different part of the revolution streams. And he represents a big group of Iranian bureaucracy, especially the Revolutionary Guard. And he wants to have power. And the way he did it, one of the ways, was to become the most famous Iranian upon earth. His way, the way he is provocative, the way he portrays himself as an Iranian hero, helped him with regaining presidential authority. Now, what worries me about the existence of Ahmadinejad is not that there's someone who denies the Holocaust or see light over his head, but the fact that he's allowed by the supreme leader to say all these things, which is disturbing because it means that the revolution is taking much more harsher line. Please. Yes.
I wonder if you could comment on various reports of a possible Syrian peace negotiation.
You refer to reports and true reports that were approved by and confirmed by both sides of negotiations that are being held in Turkey. Now, these negotiations have evolved from the back channel that was created immediately after the attack on the reactor, when, as I said, Prime Minister Olmert used the Turkish Prime Minister to assure President Assad that Israel would never take responsibility. Generally speaking, I think that every time that your adversary agrees to speak with you, you should speak with him. Therefore, if asked, I think that the United States should sit down and negotiate with Iran. You cannot say no to an enemy when he wants to sit with you. However, the negotiations in Turkey are useless and nothing would come out of them. Why? Because both sides came to the negotiation table from the irrelevant reasons. President Assad wants to regain international legitimacy. He's afraid of the tribunal investigating the murder of Hariri. He wants to have some negotiation with Europe. He wants to have some relations with the US. And what's a better way to do it than have something with Israel? So now he can go to the European and say, why are you not speaking with me? I'm speaking with Israel. And you know, he is giving, except for the Jewish Week, he has given interviews to all papers in the world declaring that he wants peace. And I think that if the Jewish Week would apply to him, he would tell the Jewish Week that he wants peace as well. So this is about Assad. Assad knows that Olmert is a dead horse politically, and he would not give him what he wants in return for peace. Now, there's an ongoing debate in Israel, severe clash between military intelligence analysis branch and Mossad's analysis branch, whether Assad really wants peace or just wants to have the Golan Heights back. But he knows that Olmert is not able to supply him what he needs to sign a peace treaty, and this is a full withdrawal from the Golan. So that's Assad. From the Olmert side, Olmert came to the negotiations and published them just to divert attentions from problems that he had at home. And it reaches a peak of what I see as embarrassing as an Israeli when he basically or physically chased President Assad in that summit in Paris trying to shake his hand. I thought this is most disturbing. Nothing would come out until there's a new president in the White House, a new prime minister in a stable government in Israel, and only then will serious negotiation can start. Sunni. Yes. There is major difference in the reports of the IAEA. There is a major difference between the findings and the remarks of the inspectors that are very critical of Iran, first for hiding the program for at least 10 years, and then for not complying with the IAEA questions and demands of surrounding all sorts of material, documents, etc. So there's a major gap between these reports of the inspectors and the findings of Dr. al-Baradei, or the conclusions of Dr. Muhammad al-Baradei. Yet, Dr. al-Baradei, who takes a very moderate approach towards Iran, also says that Iran, he didn't say a full, he didn't say breach of the NPT or violation, but he used other terms of non-compliance to many of the demands and the questions of the IAEA. And in any case, if Iran only wants to produce energy, why did it invest so much into trying, and I don't know why Iran needs nuclear energy, because it of course has gas and oil, but even if, why it has invested so much in trying to hide it and supply the material only after this press conference was assembled by the opposition group in Washington. So this is about your first question. I would just add that the estimations about the Iranian bomb talks about 3 to 4 to 5 years to assemble the first nuclear device, and another 1 to 2 years to the ability to adjust the nuclear device to a warhead. Now about Shiite, a Shiite country in the Sunni Middle East, I would just add that countries in the Middle East that not willingly and not happily accepted the fact that Israel holds nuclear weapon would never agree that Iran would have it. And immediately would start, if Iran declares that it has the able or performance or a test, would immediately start a nuclear race in the Middle East. I don't see Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Algeria, and other countries agree to a status where a Shiite country has the weapon and they don't. They agreed Israel to have it without starting a nuclear race, but I don't see them agreeing with the same status with Iran.
One more question.
We are talking about the NIE, the National Intelligence Estimate of November of 2007, that basically said that Iran stopped the work of the part of developing a bomb called the weapon group, of the weaponizing group, as early as 2003. Now, I can, if we had like 4 hours, I could quote intelligence sources from American intelligence, French, German, Spanish, British, Israeli, who all criticize with the most aggressive terms the NIE, saying that they don't have anything of their own to corroborate this. Not just that. Admiral Michael McConnell, the Director of National Intelligence, in 28th of February 2007, meaning 6 months before the publication of the NIE, in a closed hearing to the Congress Committee on Intelligence that is quoted in the book, says exactly the opposite. The same guy who signed the NIE in November of 2007, 6 months before, says the exact opposite. And his declaration afterwards, though not complete withdrawal, but basically said that he takes at least one step back from the NIE. The NIE was an intelligence putsch against the President of the United States, trying to cuff his hand in case he thinks about a strike against Iran. Now, I don't know if he was thinking. I heard people saying that he was not considering the attack after being so sunk in the quicksands of Iraq. But the intelligence community have produced a document that is not corroborated by any other source, is not supportive of any other, and even the intelligence community of the United States believes that it was a false document, and I think that we would soon see a correction in this November. We would soon see a correction to the NAE saying that indeed the weapon group does exist. But even if we take, and I would end with that, even if we take the NAE face value, basically what the NAE says, he says there are 4 steps to developing a nuclear power, nuclear bomb. The last one is the shortest and the easiest. And this one, the 3 phases do exist, and the Iranians are boasting these 3 phases themselves. And the last one does not exist. It is basically as if Ford would start building a factory for cars, and after 4 or 5 years would say, we are not going to produce any cars in this factory, but yet we are going to finish the factory. And I think that time will tell and prove how wrong, and maybe maliciously wrong, was the NAE. Thank you very much, and again, my apologies.